Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It's 11:37, April 19th. I want to thank got some new subscribers this week, so really appreciate that. And again, I always respond to the comments. Sometimes I wait when I got a bunch of them, and then I just kind of hit them all, respond to them all. And then sometimes I just respond as I go as they come in. But really appreciate that. I do respond to every comment, and can't say it enough, but can't do this wacky thing without the support of all the cool people that continually check out this channel and keep it growing, at a nice little steady pace. So very, very cool. It's a very gray and overcast and rainy and foggy day today. It's super dark outside. Pretty nice weekend. Really, really cool. I had a jam session slash rehearsal slash, I guess, tryout for a new project band yesterday. And I'm really excited about what it could lead to. We have a couple of shows. I haven't, I'm not going to really announce it yet, I guess, for what it's worth, but really, really excited. It's a new project with some people I've known for a while, but I've never worked with them in kind of a capacity of playing in a band. Very creative people. One of the folks that's involved is an old friend that I haven't seen in years, and so that's been really cool, kind of reconnecting. But we had our first kind of jam practice tryout kind of thing for me. The material is pretty challenging, and you know, it took me a while to figure out what the heck's going on, but I'm really loving the material. So as long as they keep having me, I'll keep doing it. But we do have a couple of gigs this summer, which is cool. So we have a couple of things to kind of work towards. So yeah, really excited about that. It's always nice having a new project. It's funny because I play with a lot of different bands, but my schedule is like pretty open. Some of the projects or bands that I play in, like we don't rehearse until right before a gig that's coming up, or some don't practice at all. I used to have a few years ago. I used to have a couple of bands that would rehearse every week, and sometimes 3 to 4 times a week. And basically, all three of those bands broke up, and then I started kind of more or less playing with a few different groups or a couple of different projects. But it's kind of different this time. So I got a lot of time to practice at home, and again, I do have practices here and there, but nothing really steady. Saturdays will be the only steady practice for a while with this kind of newer project. So that's pretty easy. I mean, one day a week with that. But anyway, really excited. I went last night to the fabulous Waldo After Dark series at the Waldo Theater. Super fun. What a great time. The Waldo After Dark series, I've done a lot of coverage of their movies that they've done, and this will be another one. I'm going to post this on Facebook as well, and a couple other places. A lot of the times with these videos, I just kind of upload them to the channel, and that's really it. Sometimes when I do specialty videos, I will post them and share them in other places. I did that with the interview I did last week with Matt Enos, which was super fun, and really appreciate all the support and all of the people kind of supporting the video and checking it out. There's been a lot of good feedback with the video. Really, really fun. That interview was super fun to do. I realized how long it's been, over a year, or at least a year, since I've done any videos, which is just crazy. Video interviews, which is my favorite thing to do. So it was really, really awesome. So when I do videos like that, like more specialty videos that take a little bit more work and effort putting them together, and actually recording the shows and getting them ready and all that stuff, and to help promote whoever that guest might be. In this case, it was Matt. I wanted to, so I'll share it and do a little bit more promotion with the video. It won't be just on the channel, but I really appreciate the people checking out the video and supporting it. Got a lot of good feedback from it, and then like with the Waldo Theater and the Waldo After Dark series, I usually do the same thing because I think what Sam and Buffy do, I've become pretty good friends with them over the years. We've become pretty good movie buddies. We've gone to, over the last couple of years or so, we've gone to a shit ton of movies together, which has been super awesome. Really great people, and I think what they do in the Mid Coast area is invaluable. It's just such an awesome series. I try to go to as many as possible. I wasn't able to go to the last two movies, but I try to go every time I have the free time to go and make it work because it's an amazing series. It's I've seen some incredible movies, and today's show is on last night's show, which was absolutely spectacular. And I have a really interesting, I mean, for what it's worth, I guess interesting story or interesting history with the movie that I saw last night. So I went last night to see a animated film called Fantastic Planet from 1973. It's a French film. It's an animated film from the 70s. This movie is such a I guess the only way I can describe this movie is it's an animated film, and it's like an acid trip. I really think it's like taking a bunch of acid. It's very science fiction, which is really cool. It's very surrealistic. It's very strange, super trippy, and it's got this real kind of dark vibe the whole way through. But it's also very meditative, and it's also very beautiful. It's got a really cool kind of like, I don't know, juxtaposition to it, which I've always talked about, with films and just art in general. I love when there's like a juxtaposition and there's like something has like a lot of different hues and colors to it, and it's not just one particular kind of mood or vibe that it puts out. Because I feel like, for me, when I see art, and this is like a perfect example of it, Fantastic Planet, when I get into art, whether it's painting or what have you, but it's usually something that happens obviously mostly with film and music. But when I see something or hear something that really, that I really resonate with, I often resonate with things that have that kind of juxtaposition where I feel like, it kind of, I don't know, makes it more realistic for me, makes it more real life, because I feel like life isn't really just one color. It's a lot of different colors. It's a lot of different feelings. It's a lot of different emotions. It's a lot of different experiences. So I feel like when you have that in art, it really resonates with me more, and that's just like my personal thing. That's one of the reasons I love David Lynch so much. And any fans of David Lynch would absolutely love this film because of the strange, kind of dreamlike, surrealist quality that it has. And that's one of the reasons I love David Lynch so much. He's always been one of my favorite directors, is that very thing, very juxtaposition. And it's interesting because, and it sounds a little weird explaining it this way, but as strange and as surrealistic as Fantastic Planet is, and then also, since I'm talking about David Lynch, as and kind of has this super heightened reality. A lot of David Lynch's films, and then also this film, you're going you're going on this journey. You're going into this kind of alternate universe, even though it really has all those qualities and it is that kind of experience. For me, I've always felt like it's more realistic and real life than most other films that I see, as far as like my experience of like that connection, because I feel like, and again, it goes back to that juxtaposition where I feel like there's white, there's the light, there's the darkness, there's love and hope, and then there's tragedy, and then there's grief, and then there's like just melancholy, you know, a big thing of melancholy underneath it all. So it's all those things, and I feel like when something really represents that, I feel like that is like, for me, is like the human experience. It really is. It just, it's like this, I don't know, almost like a apex of that, or some kind of like a zeitgeist of all of those things accumulating. And that's just how I've always felt about David Lynch and films like this. So, Fantastic Planet was shown last night at the Waldorf Theater at 7 o'clock. And again, I have a kind of a weird, interesting, kind of crazy history with this film. So I wanted to talk about the whole experience. I believe, no, I definitely haven't done a show on this movie. I know, I'm pretty sure I reviewed. It's been interesting lately. I've been going through some movies that I've actually owned for a long time, on DVD or Blu-ray, mostly DVDs. And there was some, like recently there was like a handful of movies, probably about 4 or 5 movies that I own that I thought I had done videos for Film Fanatic, for the YouTube channel. But then I realized I didn't. What I had done was I had done reviews for those movies for my Facebook Film Fanatic page. I used to do, when I first started doing video stuff for, well, just in general, my first go of it, of trying to do some video stuff for my channel or for my page, because I had my, and I still have it, but I don't really use it because Facebook is just really really weird, because I just feel like, I don't know, it's just really strange. But anyway, I don't really use the page. Film Fanatic Facebook page still exists, and I've had that page for, I don't know, quite a few years, probably like 7 years or something like that, maybe 7 or 8 years longer. And it was funny because I've always been into movies, and I remember, I had no experience with running like a film page or doing reviews or any of these things. But I had this feeling of like, oh, that might be a kind of a fun thing to do one day, is to maybe, start up a film page where I just kind of talk about movies, and more or less do reviews and talk about movies that I own. And I remember at that time, this was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, I asked a couple of friends like what their thoughts were, and they're like, yeah, yeah, you should do it. You should start a little page where you just, review movies, talk about horror movies or whatever. And I was like, okay, great. So then I started my Facebook page, Film Fanatic, and it's still up there, but I barely post on it anymore. But I started the page, and then it was fun. I was getting like, getting going, and I was starting to get some good traction. And then a few years into it, maybe 2 years or 3 years into it, well, I should say longer than that, because it wasn't until during COVID actually where I started doing. So about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I started doing these Facebook Live videos. So what and I did those for a couple of years, and it was a big learning experience, and it was a lot of fun. Did some interviews, and just did a bunch of different things. And then from there, I started writing reviews for Opera House Video, where I did these kind of little published reviews of films that were coming out. A lot of newer ones, and then a lot of old ones. And I did that for a couple of years, and that was a lot of fun. Well, maybe about a year I did that, where I wrote these like reviews for films that were in like that were published, in paper, physical media form, and then also online. And that was a whole new thing. I had never done that before, so it's always fun to try new things. So, and then things were acting weird. I had just strange experiences with Facebook, and then I was like, okay, maybe I'll do my YouTube channel. Maybe I'll give that a shot. And then I started doing that. And I've had the YouTube channel for actually a long time, but it wasn't until 3 years ago that I started doing these. Started the channel, the Film Fanatic channel, and that's kind of all I do right now. So I used to have an Instagram page. I still do, but it got hacked last year, so I had to start over again. And I'm like, I'm not going through that again. So I just going through. I'm just focusing from now on, just on this Film Fanatic channel. So, but I realized when I was going through those videos that I had, I was like, oh wait, I think I did do a show on these movies, because I have a lot of videos, about 1,000 on my channel. But then I realized, no, I only did reviews for them when I was just doing Facebook Live videos. So it's been fun kind of going back to some of those films that I've had for quite a few years, and setting up reviews, and doing some new videos. So some of the last few videos have been movies pertaining to that situation. So it's a lot of fun. But anyway, I've seen well, including last night. Fantastic Planet was the second time seeing it last night at the Lola Theater. There was a lot of people there too. It was my only my second time seeing this movie, and the first time and only time I had seen it was actually during COVID on my laptop watching it on YouTube because it is free on YouTube, I believe, and that's how I watched it. And so I'm going to talk about that whole situation for what it's worth and my experience watching the movie and then seeing it this time. So I saw this movie. It was probably, I would say, 2 or 3 months into COVID, which was 2020, I think, or 2021. It's hard to picture. It was 5 years ago, which is kind of fucked up. But I saw Fantastic Planet about 2 or 3 months into COVID. And previously the world was kind of, well, I don't know, kind of normal, kind of like your normal thing, I guess. So, and it's funny because I think about it a lot, but the last movie I saw before the world changed forever was actually the Invisible Man remake. I saw that in the theater. That's actually how I heard about COVID too, because which Lee Winnell's last movie, The Wolfman, is an absolute piece of garbage, but The Invisible Man, which he did before, is really really good. I really love that movie, and that was the last movie I saw in the theater. I went into it totally cold, and I remember 2 or 3 days after I saw The Invisible Man remake, I looked it up. I was curious about it because I didn't know really anything about it, but I was like, that movie's awesome. I really dug it, and I have it on Blu-ray, and it's a great movie. So I looked it up, and I was like looking at reviews and seeing how it did in box office, and I saw this interview with some of the producers and the filmmakers. Lee Winnell directed it and wrote it, and they were talking about how they were worried about how successful this movie was going to be, especially globally, domestically, because of this new thing that's happening called COVID. And that it was spreading, it was detected shortly before the movie came out, and then it was, basically turning into a pandemic so quickly, and it was just spreading everywhere. And that was literally the first time I ever heard of COVID. I remember looking it up, finding this info about The Invisible Man, because I was like, this movie's really awesome. I kind of want to find out some more things. And that was literally the first time I heard about COVID. I'm like, what the hell? What the fuck is this? So that was how it started. And then so COVID came, and then, we went through the lockdown, which was, geez, a long, long time. Some places went through it, for, I think one of the worst places that was hit the hardest, one of the hardest hit places in the world was probably, I mean, everybody and everywhere was affected by it, obviously, but I think Italy had one of the longest lockdowns, like 2 or 3 years. And then they would open things up, and then it would get closed down again. And that happened a lot. And I remember here in Maine, it was like, I don't know, probably a year, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, but it was close to a year where everything was locked down, where it was what everybody experienced, where suddenly there all restaurants closed down. Any place where there was every bar, every club, every movie theater, and anything. The only places that stayed open were like gas stations, and I think there were even some supermarkets that had closed, but the main supermarkets like Hannaford and things like that were staying open. But there were like really strict guidelines. Like if you went into them, you had to wear a mask, and there were at one point it was really strict where I think you were not allowed to be in some of these places without masks, and it was crazy, and it happened so quick. It felt like it happened overnight, like literally, and you could just see it the trajectory where it was like, wait, what is this? And then, oh my God, oh shit, oh fuck. And it just like happened so quick, and I remember it was so disorienting. And I know it was for most people. And I've talked about this before, but I had a very particularly my experience around COVID was pretty much horrific. And I know, like, the one thing that got me through a lot of those situations, and got me through that situation, was that I at least knew I was not alone, and that I was not the only person experiencing what was happening. But it did hit me very bad, and I know, like, in a lot of ways, since that whole thing, I'll never be the same person. So, but anyway, I'm not going to go off on all of that stuff. But anyway, so lockdown came, and it was like January, February or so when COVID came, and then it was like really like heavy, and things were, you know, there was this, basically the state of emergency, and everything closed down, and it was just like it was crazy. And so I, like millions of other people, I was home. But I was having a really hard time, and I was at a place where my general mindset was it got it got really so bad that, I literally felt like just going to the local supermarket. Like, the closest supermarket to my house is Wentworth, and I go there a lot of the times just because it's very close. It's convenient. It's like an hour away. An hour away. It's like 2 minute drive from my house. And so I remember having that mindset, and it lasted for months. That just to go to Hannaford, I could be killed. I could die. Like, literally believing that, and feeling this way for months. So, but anyway, so lockdown came, and it was still like kind of the winter time. So I was home. Things were not obviously not going very, very, very good at all. And then I remember we had a really big snowstorm. We had this big snowstorm, and it was crazy. We had, like, I think 8 to 12 inches. But the thing that was really bad about the storm was that it was a big windstorm as well. It was almost like a nor'easter, where they were predicting when the storm was coming that it was probably going to knock out a lot of power, and and the internet and all these things. So it was like, okay, double whammo. Plus, we're locked down. So that the storm came, and it was crazy. The power was knocked out. I was here in my house by myself, no power for like a week, and it was surreal. It was surreal, and I didn't leave my house. But I think it was like a day or two into that whole experience. Obviously, I couldn't watch any movies or listen to music, but I did have my laptop plugged in. My other laptop that just recently died. I had that plugged into the wall. I usually am in the habit, for the most part, with my electronic devices like my phone or my computer stuff. I usually always keep that stuff plugged in, and I happen to have done that with this situation. So I was like, okay, what am I doing? I couldn't, I was eating food, canned food. I was eating like cold tuna fish out of a can, and I'm like, it was cold. Tons of blankets on me and candles, and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And I was like, oh wait, can't watch any movies, but I have this computer. My computer's still charged. So what? Maybe I can find a movie that I can watch, or that I've saved, or something. And then I came across the internet was out. I remember too for a while, but then the internet came back on for a brief time. Um, so, and I think I had downloaded. Yeah, I must have downloaded this movie because that was how I saw it. So I had it saved to my computer. But that was that night when, I realized I had my computer that was still going, had it powered up, had it juiced up. That was the first time I watched Fantastic Planet. And before that, I had actually heard about Fantastic Planet quite a few years ago. It would come up here and there online where people were saying that this movie was like really, really good. It was like a very trippy kind of animated film. I I don't stay up on it as much, but I'm still a big fan. I really love anime, and I do really love animated films. I'll pretty much watch anything if it's good. I mean, I don't really care, but I went through phases in my life where I would watch tons of anime. I have a decent collection of anime, but I got really into anime a few years back. That was the the two genres or style of filmmaking that I got into, around college was I really got into documentaries and then I really got into anime. So I used to check out all kinds of anime. I don't really stay up on a lot of new anime. I like some of it, but generally I'm kind of always a little bit disappointed. But I like a lot of the old school ones. But this movie I heard, Fantastic Planet, wasn't a Japanese style. It was a French film, and it was super old, like 73. And I remember seeing a little trailer for it at one point before I watched it, and I'm like, wow, okay, I have to see this. So that was that night when everything was. It felt literally like the world was ending. I watched Fantastic Planet, and I remember probably sitting in this chair with my laptop with my headphones and watching it, and it was absolutely the most one of the most amazing experiences. Just as far as sitting home and watching a movie, because this movie was so spot on and it was the perfect thing to watch with how kind of the world was feeling at that given time. I mean, it was totally wild, totally psychedelic, and an acid trip. Like I've described this movie to people who haven't seen it before as it's a lot of things, but it feels like it's literally an acid trip, and it's an experience. And I think I did a review for Fantastic Planet for because it was like maybe a year later or so I started doing the Facebook live videos on. I had my Film Fanatic page, but I think it was a little bit after that time. I think maybe after lockdown when things started to kind of open up a little bit, but there were very strict things that you needed to do when you went out in public, and sometimes a lot of these things were enforced. And I think that was around the time when I first started doing Facebook Live videos. And I remember, I don't know why I remember it, but the first video I ever did for my Film Fanatic Facebook page, the first live video I ever did was Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man. I don't know why I remember that, but that was the very first time I ever did it. So, did a video. So, but I remember, and then I started doing other videos, and I'm pretty sure I did a video on Fantastic Planet, but I never did a show on here. So, fast forward 5 years, and we are where we are. And then the other night, I was reconnected with my friend Aaron, who is a big time movie friend, buddy, and just a great friend anyway. Well, we've gone to so many movies together. It's been a while. It's been a while since we hung out, and I was, we were talking a little bit. I was like just reaching out saying hey, and I hope everything's good. And she's like, hey, you gonna go to the movie Saturday night? I was like, oh, what's playing Saturday night? And she's like, it's at Waldorf Theater, and she's like, Fantastic Planet. And I was like, oh shit. And I didn't have anything going on last night, so I was like, yep, I'm gonna be there. I will see you there. So then we ended up going out. We met at Moody's Diner. Is that what it's called? I always forget the name of it. We went there for some food, and then we went to the theater afterwards. And it was great. It was there was a pretty good amount of people. There was like 40 people there or so, 40, 50 people, and it was incredible to see this on the big screen. My friend Erin, who I went with, where I met there, she had not seen it, and she is way more versed and is aware and has seen more. And we also have a lot of the same interest in films, but she's like really into anime and stuff, big time. And so she is a little bit more versed in that style than I am, even though I really love it a lot too. But she's a little bit more up on somewhat newer anime films or just animated films in general. But she had never seen for Fantastic Planet. I'm like, oh my god, I remember telling her, it's like this movie was or is was made for you. Like this is because I kind of know her taste, and she likes more, well, like Japanese anime stuff where it's a little bit more, strange and psychedelic. One of our favorite movies that we both just are so in love with is Perfect Blue, which is one of the most incredible Japanese animated films ever. Super dark and spooky, and it's so great. It's about a serial killer essentially, but amazing. Perfect Blue. So that's like one of our big interests and loves. But anyway, she had never seen this, and I was super excited to watch Fantastic Planet on the big screen because this is such a visual feast and such an experience. This movie that it's really the only way to see it. I really want to get it on Blu-ray or 4K. I talked to Sam and Buffy who run the Wall After Dark, and they do. This was, I think, a 4K or a Criterion Collection version of the film. So it looked absolutely incredible. When I first saw Fantastic Planet, again, it was on YouTube, and it wasn't very good quality. It was okay. Sometimes you can get away a little bit more with animated films as opposed to like live action films as far as quality, but it was still watching on YouTube, and you know, it was okay. But the movie itself was so, and just it's a masterpiece. It really is. So to see it on the big screen, I was super excited. And again, I had only seen it once. It's been 5 years, and plus, the state of mind when I first saw this movie, it was crazy. But it was kind of like taking, like, if you're kind of sick, and then you get the perfect medicine to take while you're sick, and it helps generally with you healing and getting back to normal. That's what Fantastic Planet was for me during COVID. It really was. And to see it on the big screen, the Waldo Theater is an amazing place, and they got a great sound system. It was absolutely spectacular, and it really was visually. I remember a lot of I like visually a lot of the aspects of that movie were kind of etched in my memory from seeing it, but a lot of the plot lines and kind of where the story goes, I totally had forgotten. The most surprising thing with my experience last night was, for some reason, I remember I had thought or kind of remembered that, or felt that I remembered that Fantastic Planet was a movie, that an animated film that had no dialogue. I remember it being just, where it was literally just like kind of a silent film, but with music, but there was no dialogue, and it was just kind of a visual thing. But that wasn't the case. There's actually a lot of dialogue in it. And for some reason, watching it last night on the big screen, I was like, oh wait, there is dialogue in this movie, and it kind of tripped me out for a second, which was kind of odd, but really great. And again, this movie's all about juxtaposition. It's absolutely sublime. It's beautiful. It's very meditative. It's very relaxing, but it's also very kind of nightmarish. It's very creepy. It's super dark, very mysterious. It's got all those qualities, everything wrapped up, in this nice pot of stew. And it's just amazing. The music for this film is absolutely incredible. Talk about the like having a real psychedelia or psychedelic experience. This movie is that. Like, it really is. It's like you're high on drugs. That's the only way I can describe the experience of Fantastic Planet. But it makes sense though. It's not like it's not for what it is. It's not some crazed drug fueled fever dream. Where there is maybe no order and it's all like just chaos. No, I really feel like as strange and as surrealistic as the movie gets, there's a lot of really cool kind of cohesiveness to the movie, which I felt was really interesting. It's very surrealistic and very strange, and it gets into some very wild territory. But it also felt like it was a pretty cohesive story about these people, these creatures, and it had a lot of interesting social commentary. I mean, I talked to Aaron. We talked a lot about the movie. We all talked about Fantastic Planet afterwards, and it's so fucking crazy that this movie came out in 1973. Like that's crazy. Like that's trippy, just into it in itself. It just that's kind of jaw dropping when you find out, like if you went into this movie and you just watched it, it's hard to tell what year it's from. I would almost feel like it's maybe a newer film, and it's obviously a French film, so it has a very unique and kind of European look to it. But I think when you find out afterwards that this came out in '73, it's like whoa. Like I think because it's so prophetic in some ways, because of some of the themes that this movie kind of goes into, and some of the to a degree like the social political things that we experience and that we are very much experiencing now. But it's not like it's not heavy handed. It's not nothing. There's not like a political agenda or nothing like that, or like somebody's hitting you over the head with a baseball bat kind of thing. There's none of that. But it really explores some stuff that's pretty deep and heavy and way ahead of its time, like crazy. I remember talking to Aaron about that. My friend Aaron, who I was sitting with, and I'm like, whoa, like one of the things that really stood out for me, and again, this movie does do an incredible job with exploring this. Well, there's so much. I think this movie has this very quiet and very meditative kind of vibe to it, and but I feel like there's so many layers in this movie. Like I really think this is one of those movies that you could see a billion times and you would probably get something new from it, because there is dialogue in it, but there's not a whole lot of dialogue, and it's actually a very kind of quiet, relatively slow paced movie. But there's so many layers, like it's really like an onion. I feel like there's so many things that this movie kind of deals with on kind of a subtle level that I think if you were to watch this movie over and over again, you would get so many different things, because it's so like metaphor, it's symbolism, mythology, even technology, social issues. So much of that stuff is in this movie, in the subtext. Like it's wild. Like it's packed with all those things. So I think on future viewings of this movie, there would be so much to discover about it. Well, one of again many things that like I probably spend multiple videos on talking about, as far as like different things that this movie, that Fantastic Planet kind of explores, and that's kind of in the subtext. But the first thing that really stood out, and I remember talking to Aaron about it, was this whole like AI shit that we're going through right now, and just technology, and how things are just moving with technology so fast, in particular with AI, how they're just moving so fast that it's kind of dizzying. And I was like, wait, this movie just totally covered a whole big section where they were talking about that this thing that we're dealing with now, because in some and there's certain things in Fantastic Planet, particularly around these different characters, and one of the things that they definitely explore is this idea of, you know, these creatures coming to terms with who they are, you know, their sense of purpose, their meaning, their interaction with each other, but then what do they do in the face of technology? Where and then they even talk about, you know, things that are, you know, kind of tangible, or things that are man-made, you know, maybe things like new achievements in science or art or what have you, or even in technology. But then they were talking about, you know, these systems that are made by living, breathing people or creatures, sentient built, you know, beings to a degree. But then what is that? What do you do now where there's like this emergence of this artificial intelligence that's also creating these things, or can create these things? And it was totally dealing with AI technology. Like, and I'm like, what? This came out in '73. Like, it was crazy. It was crazy. That was one of many, many things that I picked up on that I was kind of blown away. I mean, just that's just wild. That's just wild. And again, I've only seen this twice, but definitely, definitely is an essential movie to buy on Blu-ray, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But Fantastic Planet again came out in '73, which is just crazy, mind blowing. And it's a French film, and it was directed by Rene Laloux. Probably pronouncing that name wrong. And again, one of the other things I wanted to mention was the music for Fantastic Planet is absolutely incredible. It really is. One of the coolest things about the Waldorf After Dark is kind of the whole presentation of the film. The way Buffy and Sam kind of put together this whole, like, they build a world like, and it's an experience when you go in to see their movies for the Waldorf After Dark series. It's, I mean, because most of the time, you know, when you go to the movie, you go to the movies in general, you go, you pay your ticket, and then you go and sit in the dark room and hopefully have a really kick-ass time. But this is a little bit different because what they do is they have, like, you go in to the Waldorf Theater, get your ticket, and then you walk into the lobby, and they have, what they usually do is they decorate the whole, like, lobby, you know, in kind of accordance to the vibe of the film. And they also have, like, tons of memorabilia put out, you know, posters. A lot of the times, one of the main things they do is the they have the soundtrack for that particular film playing in the background, and they create this whole vibe, and they have all this cool stuff, you know, giveaways. They also have little, like, buttons you can get, merchandise, stickers, sometimes T-shirts, you know, just merchandise. But then they also kind of decorate the whole space, so it's part of this whole, like, experience, which you never get when you go to a movie. You know, you just go into the dark room. So it's so cool that they go into that kind of detail, Buffy and Sam, and they put a lot of time and a huge amount of effort into, you know, the whole experience, and it's just super awesome. It's unlike anything else. The music for Fantastic Planet was composed by Alan Goragar, and the music again is so psychedelia. It's pure psychedelic. It's pure psychedelia. It's just it's so perfect for the atmosphere. The other thing that's so cool about this movie and the soundtrack is that there's music pretty much throughout the entire film. Well, there is. There's music literally going through the entire experience. And I really uh, as far as films that have music, where literally it's the music. I mean, obviously music is such an integral part for a film. Like, I mean, it's massive. But a lot of times when you watch a full length feature film, there's moments of where there's dialogue, there's ebb and flow, there's situations of where there is, you know, maybe a real quiet space where it's just dialogue driven. And music is usually used to kind of like enhance the mood, whether there's like drama or tension or, sexual things or violence or darkness, all of the emotions that films try to, stories try to show. And so that's that, but there's always this ebb and flow. And usually it's interesting with music the way it's used because it's always to a lot of films I feel like, and there's so many. I mean, I'm so into film score stuff, but there's so many films and so many great film scores out there that I feel are so powerful that without that element, it would feel not as strong or as magical. And I feel like there's this thing of where it acts like a character and it enhances the experience. And I feel like in some ways, I don't know, like films in general, again, there's so many aspects to making a film. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, you have direction, you have actors, you have dialogue, the casting, the cinematography, the editing, and the film score, and then ultimately trying to get the film distributed. Like, there's so many fucking aspects. There's like the costume design, there's the set design, practical effects. I mean, it's just endless, endless, and It's an unbelievable feat when a film, I think, in general, when it gets made. Like it's kind of like climbing Mount Everest, and it feels like it's impossible because of the weight of how many things there are to do. And we talked, Matt, when I was doing the interview with Matt Enos, we talked a lot about that. It was really interesting, especially coming from him, who he's a filmmaker and he's in the trenches doing it. So it was very cool. Anyway, and it's an interesting balance with composers and film score uh, musicians. I've seen a lot of interviews with Trent Reznor, who's one of my favorite, and Atticus Roth, who are part of Nine Inch Nails, of course, and the two of them have won multiple Grammy or Academy Awards at this point. They've worked mainly with David Fincher, but they've also done all kinds of other films. And I just think that the music that they do is absolutely incredible. I'm a massive fan of Nine Inch Nails and their composing for film scores. But I've seen interviews with them where they do this thing of where they they find it's really challenging because, after Trent Reznor having Nine Inch Nails for so long, so many years, so many years, where obviously it's an electronic group that's been around for years, and it's the songs, the music, the presentation, that's the featured thing. And Trent Reznor was talking about how the music, when he was first working with David Fincher, and their first collaboration that they did was The Social Network, which is one of the greatest soundtracks ever, and along with Atticus Ross, who was also another great composer, who eventually joined forces with Nine Inch Nails. So he was talking about that really tricky way of how to weave the music into the film because he couldn't approach it like it was a song or a record of Nine Inch Nails where that's the featured thing. He had to create this music that was going to be kind of adding some color to the scene, to richness, adding a vibe, adding richness, but it couldn't overshadow the characters or the film itself. And he felt like that was really hard making music that had, that was engaging and that was enhancing the story, but couldn't take the front seat. It couldn't, if it, and in general, really, I think with composers when they're making music for films, like if the music is so much in the forefront, it can kind of overshadow the story, and it can kind of get in the way. Even if the music, I think, to a degree, is very well done and conceived and put together, if it's so out in the forefront, it can just take away from the movie and almost take you out of the experience. And Trent Reznor was talking about this, and I've read a lot of other or seen lots of other interviews with directors over the years and film composers where they talk about the same thing of making music that can just really add color to the story and it enhance the story. And it's really interesting, really, really interesting. And I find that to be a really, really tough thing to do because, it's all about striking that balance. And the other thing that sometimes happens, what I find, because again, I really love soundtracks. Like, I mean, for my weird band Quantum, it's kind of the biggest influence for me personally. It really is. And the whole theatrical thing with the masks and the lighting and the wigs and especially the music. Like a lot of the times, like when I'm composing music or writing music, that's like the main influence, the movie world, and especially soundtracks and the whole aesthetic. So, but the thing that's interesting is like I try to like what I find is really challenging is because I'm so influenced by that music and that style, I'm putting it in the context of where it is a little bit more in the foreground. So I have to like strike a balance of where it isn't necessarily boring or doesn't go anywhere because that is now in the forefront because it's not for a film, but yet it's really inspired by it. So it's interesting. It's kind of weird, but one of the things that I've seen too over the years is again that's like my pretty much my deepest love and biggest influence for the weird band that I do with Quantum is film score. A lot of the times, I mean, I own a lot of film scores on CD and soundtracks, and I listen to that stuff a lot. But sometimes it's happened to me where there's certain soundtracks or film scores that I've gotten that, in the context of watching the film, it's magical. But then when I have the soundtrack or the score by itself, and I'm listening to the score, and that's all I'm, experiencing, it isn't as it isn't as good. It's not as rich. It's not. It kind of can be almost. It can almost give you this feeling of like it's well, kind of boring, and it just doesn't have. It feels like it might meander too much, or just kind of coast into places of where it's just not really holding your attention. So it's like, kind of that thing of where it's out of context, so it's not really as powerful. But with in the context of the film, it really it's you have all of those things, all those elements, so it does work. So I've had that experience where certain films soundtracks that I've gotten when I see them listen to them out of context, out of the film, without the film, it's a little bit flat, and it's not as engaging. And so I get really fascinated by soundtracks that can do that, like film scores that are so strong that in any kind of situation, they'll still be completely captivating. Where in the context, obviously, first and foremost, in that particular film, it will be magical. But then you can listen to the soundtrack by itself, and it's still a magical experience. And I always find that is a real interesting balance, from the aesthetic or the context of where the music is kind of put, or the way you're seeing it, or the way you're experiencing it, the way you're hearing it. It's very interesting. But I naturally gravitate towards soundtracks that have that vibe, where you can listen to it and experience it, whether it's in any way, whether it's by itself, in the movie, or in a trailer, or song, or piece by piece. It's still that, it's very strong. Like a couple of examples of that would be like, well, one movie that I really really love, and I think it's one of the best movies that Clint Eastwood's directed, and I remember seeing it in the theater, and I really loved the whole kind of world. It was a really great crime kind of drama. It was a pretty dark film, but there was a movie that, and I really liked the film score too a lot. But quite a few years ago, Clint Eastwood directed a movie called Mystic River, which I think is a really, really awesome movie. I think it's one of the best movies that Clint Eastwood has ever directed, with Sean Penn and Tim Robbins. It's like and Kevin Bacon. It's a murder mystery film, and it's a drama, but it's really dark and it's really good. It's an awesome movie. It's a movie I really want to see again. It's real gritty, and it's about these kids that are living in this neighborhood, and they become they are kidnapped, and there's all these different suspects in this family and in this town in Boston, I believe, of people who were being suspected. But it's really good. And one of the things I loved about it, not only that movie, was the visual. I mean, it's such a well crafted movie, and some of the great acting, great script, beautifully shot. I really love the music for it too. And I remember quite a few years ago now, I bought Mystic River on DVD, and it was a really cool combination pack. It's DVD, I still have it. And basically, it was a combo pack where it had the movie, it was a DVD collection. I'm not sure if I've ever reviewed Mystic River for this channel, but that would be a great movie to talk about. But basically, it was a combo pack, and it has the movie itself, Mystic River, but then it has the accompanying soundtrack, which is a trend that I started seeing all the time with a lot of the Blu-rays that I bought, especially in the world of exploitation movies, which was super awesome. And I don't really see that as much, which is kind of sad. But anyway, when I bought this Mystic River DVD collection, I was like, oh wow, awesome! I always loved this music, and and the movie's great. And I remember watching the movie, and I was excited to listen to the soundtrack. And I listened to the soundtrack in the context of where it's just the soundtrack, and I didn't really like the soundtrack. It didn't make, it had nowhere near of the impact that it has in the context of the film. And again, this is just my opinion, but in the context, in the framework of a film, a featured film, it's very powerful. But outside of that context, it's it's kind of boring, and it's like it's just not impactful really at all. It's like pure background music. But soundtracks that I feel have that, where however you access it, however you listen to it, it's going to be an incredible experience. I think the soundtrack for Close Encounters of the Third Kind by John Williams is one of the greatest soundtracks ever. I have it on vinyl, which is absolutely incredible. But I think other examples would be Blade Runner, the Blade Runner soundtrack, Ridley Scott's masterpiece. That's an amazing soundtrack. I also feel like The House by the Cemetery is another great one. There's so many great ones. But I always find it interesting when you can have those two things. And I really feel like with Fantastic Planet, and it's unique because, again, a lot of these movies have that ebb and flow where there are scenes of where there is no music. It might be just dialogue driven, or a changeover to a scene, Well, Fantastic Planet, it's very interesting because the music is throughout the entire movie. Like, it's pretty incredible. Like, it's pretty incredible. Like, literally every scene, the music is playing. And the music has such a dynamic kind of range and timbre that it like it's like a soft cushion kind of effect. Anyway, can't stress enough. Definitely the next Waldo After Dark movie that's coming out. Hopefully, it'll be in a couple of months or so, maybe less. They kind of do it like a bi-monthly series. There were two movies I was not able to see. They had the UHF movie, the Weird Al Yankovic movie, which was the most recent one, and the one that they showed before that, which I was super bummed I couldn't go, was the David Cronenberg's The Fly. I mean, what else can you say about that? The movie's the shit. So I was not able to go to that. So, but definitely, if you're in the area, Mid Coast area, to keep your eyes peeled for anything happening at World After Dark. They're the best, and definitely get it if you get a chance. Please check out Fantastic Planet. It will blow you away. Absolutely, it's an absolute masterpiece from 1973. All right, peace.